Hi, it's Stoddy B, and I wanted to talk today about the new Fremont event that has been announced. This was announced, I guess this morning if you're in the US. So you can see good old Jeff Sonis here has posted, and it is pretty long, it is pretty dense. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. However, it's full of good stuff as well as clarifications that could be important to read. This is in some sense a little premature when it comes to the announcement because I do think that this is going to use a PDF of scenarios that needs to be modified before we can actually do the tournament. However, the modifications, as I understand, are going to be pretty minimal, and the hope of posting this early was to ensure that people had the opportunity to fleet build, get a good grasp on any of the specific special fleet building rules, which we'll talk about, and just make sure that people were able to get ahead of the game when it came to building the fleet and that they were ready for the tournament. So details may slightly change when it comes to the scenarios that will be played. However, the overall broad strokes will remain the same. So I'm really personally excited for this event. The reason being that it is competitive, but it is not the typical head-to-head 1v1 that you see out of Fremont. It is actually an Earth-Romulan War scenario pack, where the head-to-head element is actually based around a scenario. Each person is randomly assigned a scenario. You don't know what you're going to get. You don't know if you'll play all of... You can't play, I guess, all the scenarios since there are only 4 rounds, and there are like 6 scenarios. So you don't know which scenarios you need to optimize your fleet for. You don't know which opponent you'll be facing, what their fleet will be, and if you'll be having the upper hand or not for a given scenario. The other big difference that has me excited for this is that it's not a standings tournament like a normal event where you're in it for yourself. You do well, you get like first place, second place, third place, whatever. It's going to be scored based on faction. So again, this is the Earth-Romulan War. The Federation will get a score, and the Romulans will get a score, and each individual is contributing to that overall score. So, in the end, it's not... I mean, obviously, your individual performance matters, but it's not going to be a strict, like, did you win, did you lose, were you able to destroy their fleet sort of situation. And so I think there will be a lot more interesting outcomes, a lot more interesting matchups as well. And I'm going very much out of order. I didn't make an outline for this, but one thing I do want to make sure that I emphasize at least a little is I think this is a really good event for a newer player or someone who's been kind of on the fence when it comes to participating in a Fremont event to jump in. Why exactly? Well, again, the scenario play will give you something to do besides just hitting your opponent's fleet as hard as you can and possibly being outmatched in that regard. It'll give you something to focus on in terms of strategy. And I don't know. For me personally, I think that's a little bit better for a newer player. It's not just can you build the best fleet, can you roll the dice the best with the biggest numbers, can you fly well enough to keep people in arc, per se. It comes down a lot more to other elements. And the other reason why is because, there's not as much emphasis on did you win, did you take out the opponent's fleet, how did you do? Oh, you got last in the tournament. Well, I mean, the Fremont events are pretty low pressure in general, and they're very welcoming and accommodating. Everyone is very friendly. However, it still feels bad if you're going through a whole tournament that's taking place over like a month or two, and you're constantly losing. This I think the impact of that will be lower. You'll have the freedom and free space to learn more and engage with the objective a little more, and just hopefully participate in the team effort and kind of bond with people that way. So I really do encourage anyone who's been on the fence, who's maybe not sure, who doesn't feel as confident about their skills, what have you, please, at least talk to someone about joining. I'm definitely going out of order. I'll come back to this. Let's talk about what is the event. So I encourage you to read this. I mean, obviously, this is what will be referenced whenever it comes to the rules of the tournament. But this is a little dense, and Discord doesn't make it super easy to read it. So I went ahead and put this in a Google Doc that we can parse a little bit more easily together. So the long end short of it is a Romulan and Federation war So all fleets are going to be Romulan or Federation pure. So you will build a 130 SP fleet using SPUDS rules. If you don't know what that is, we'll talk about it. But it's 130 SP using SPUDS costing, Romulan pure or Federation pure. What is meant by that specifically is if you build a fleet, your all of the cards have to have the Federation symbol on them or the Romulan symbol on them, depending on which one you're building. So you can include something like the Mirror Voyager that's a Federation mirror ship dual faction. That's fine. But you cannot include something like the Assimilation Target Prime that's only a mirror universe ship, because it doesn't have the Federation symbol, for example. So, pretty simple rules, probably pretty intuitive, but that's the scope of things. The fleet building rules do get a little bit more complicated, but you're looking to either pick Romulan or Federation and then going from there. You can expect to play anywhere from 1 to 4 games. You basically tell them how much you want to participate, and the goal is to try to make it so you don't play the same scenario or the same opponent twice. So if you say you want to play 4 times, you will play, hopefully, 4 unique scenarios out of the 6, and you should play 4 unique opponents. They try pretty hard to make that a reality. I'm sure I wouldn't be surprised if maybe someone has to, but well, hopefully not. So again, it's team scoring, which is nice, and I guess that's subjective, but for this purpose, it's nice. Now, the other thing is that you're not necessarily just picking Romulan and Federation. That's the end of it. You can either pick fleet or one of each. Yes. Okay. So you either pick Romulan or Federation, or you can also submit 2 fleets, one Romulan, one Federation, and then tell them how you want to play with one of these 2 options. So you can either play for both sides to help round out the different sides and make sure people have opponents. This would be for someone who just wants to play as much as they can. They don't necessarily care about which side wins. They just want to get some games in, right? Or you can pick this highest bidder mode where you submit both of your fleets, and then basically whichever side needs more players, that's the side that you'll be assigned to. To be honest, this is probably the one I'm going to pick. I think it would be fun to make sure that I think it'd be fun to participate, and I want to make sure that there's flexibility when it comes to making sure that both sides have even numbers. But you pick what's good for you. Maybe you don't understand. Maybe you don't really care for Romulan fleets. You're not as used to them, and you want to play Federation or vice versa. Maybe you just don't like the cards on one side. To each their own. Please do whatever works well for you. All right, so 130 SP, pick a faction, or submit both with one of these 2 selections. We've gotten that covered. So you will use SPUDS. The link is in the actual is in the post. Now, if you don't know what SPUDS is a community, or Fremont specifically, maintained fleet builder where the ships are all recosted to kind of reflect the modern ship costing values. So some of the ships in the game have been recosted to much lower values. Not all of the ships have. Fremont has gone through and done an initial pass to bring a lot of the older ships more in line with the modern costing model. And so what this means is that even older ships, like name ships and generics and all that, they tend to be a lot more in line and therefore usable. So there's no other recosting currently. Like, you don't have to worry about none of the actual upgrades are recosted. Nothing really has changed. Another nice thing about this is that things like official erratas are represented on the cards typically. So that's another nice benefit is you actually kind of see what you're getting usually. So anyway, if you don't know how to use this, just ask. It's fairly intuitive. Pick a ship, drag it over. If you click one of these, it'll help filter for that specific upgrade type, and you can use the checkboxes to filter for what you're looking for. Whenever you find what you want, drag it over and go from there. You'll notice it does things like automatically calculate changes for you. If you hover over it, you can see what it's doing. So I've got the printed value of 5, a faction penalty of 1. That's how we arrive at 6. And it'll keep your ship base total as well as your fleet total down here. Remember, you're aiming for 130 total. So don't take this as 100% gospel. You will have to double check it. Every now and then there's an interaction that it's not accounting for correctly. But anyway, ask if you have questions. That's what SPUDS is. We're using this to build fleets. You will also submit your fleet via SPUDS. So you would go up after building it, grab the URL, and if need be, you can just pass that off to one of the tournament runners. Anyway, ask if you have questions if you're new. So, faction purity, we've already talked about. Bans. You cannot use any cards that have the Borg faction symbol. So you cannot use the Voyager that has the Borg faction symbol on it, for example. That's just the rules. So, in addition to the 130 SP total, you also need to have your individual ships be 45 SP or less. So normally this is a 50 SP limit. We've changed it to 45 SP. There are a few reasons why that happened, and I'll talk about some of that after we get through all these. So if you're running something like Deep Space Nine, which already has a high, it's like 43 SP or something, you can actually add 8 SP to that and go above the 45 SP. The idea there being, you know, it allows you to actually equip something to it. All right, this is a pretty unique limitation. The average printed captain skill of your captains cannot exceed 7. So you can run something like Picard 9, but you can't run Picard 9, Kirk 8, Janeway 9 or 8, whatever she is, because it's going to put you above the 7 average cap. So essentially the way this is going to work is you'll take all of your captains. Let's put, I don't know, just a couple ships here. There we go. So it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter what, I'm not like actually submitting this fleet or anything. Don't pay too much attention to what I'm picking. But the point is like if I grab Picard, if I grab Kirk, and then I grab the Doctor, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to say I have 3 captains with printed captain skills on them. And I'm going to then add them up and divide them by the number of ships that have those captains, right? So basically 9 plus 9 plus 8 divide by 3 is going to give me a number over 7, and so that this would not be legal. So if I wanted to run Picard and Kirk, I would have to actually pick a captain that has a printed skill that is low enough to bring my average down to 7 or less, right? So these 8s wouldn't work. A 7 wouldn't work, right? I'd have to start going down past 6 to make this work. Of note, some people are going to be using like generic captains, right? Like this is always technically an option. You could do that. Now here's the thing. For the purposes of this calculation, the generic captains do not count. So if I was going to try and submit this fleet, the way that we would calculate it would be 9 plus 9 divided by 2. There are a few reasons for that. The main reason why is because it was thought that this would encourage people to run some of the lower skill captains that you don't really see as much. And another reason this was done was to reduce the impact of, especially the Federation, but really both sides, reducing the impact of this like high captain skill thing that happens, where Federation has a lot of access to really good high skill captains, but also on the flip side, where Romulan cloaking device for the Romulans tends to be a little bit, I guess, oppressive for the opponent, is whenever the Romulan player has the highest captain skill. It allows them to determine where they want to go with their sensor echo with perfect information, and that can ultimately make it very hard for the opponent to actually attack the ships. So the thought process was don't necessarily heavily restrict captain skill, don't ban captains or whatever. Just make it so that both sides have a bit of a mix, right? You can have at least one ship with high captain skill, but to do that, you're going to have to balance it with a low captain skill captain, right? And you can't just do something like run 2 massive captains and ships and then run like a swarm of a bunch of generics. We want to actually see those low captain skill captain C play. So that was a lot of the reasoning behind the captain skill limit. So of note, so again, I already talked about like if you bring a generic captain, that's not going to count. If you're bringing something like a fighter squadron which has no captain, that's also not going to count. You just don't even consider it whenever you're doing the average calculation. One exception, or I guess not exception, but a couple of noteworthy cards here. The Doctor is a printed captain skill 8. You put captains under him. Those captains do not count, the ones under the Doctor, towards the calculation. He just counts as an 8, right? Garib, the Romulan drone ship pilot, he is going to count based on whatever his captain skill ends up being after you put a captain under him. So if you put Shenzan under him for a 9, and that gives Garib a 9 captain skill, that's going to count as a 9. Anyway, if you have questions about this, ask. That's the disclaimer for all this stuff. Okay, so some modifiers, right? This is based on printed captain skill. So if you do something like put a captain on the USS Galaxy, which replaces the captain skill to be higher, then that you just consider the printed captain skill. You don't consider their boost. Similarly, admirals will add to the captain skill. You don't have to worry about that. Just the printed captain skill. So you can run, a 7-point captain, a 7 skill captain, and boost him up to a 9 with a +2 admiral, and that's still only going to count as a 7. So that's the high end of that, or I guess the high end, low end of that. All right, so let's get into the further restrictions on actual cards. So there are a number of cards that are outright banned, and there are a number of cards that are called restricted. So for the Federation, no NX-01. The ship is just very defensive, very difficult to kill, can be a problem in a lot of respects. And the thought was to try and kind of like mix things up. The concern is that we would see a lot of NX-01s, and that the Romulans would have a difficult time dealing with it. So it was struck from the record. Similarly, the Scimitar was banned. This is for a few reasons, but I would argue, or I guess ultimately submit, that probably the biggest reason why is because it's just the most obvious ship to include on the Romulan side, and the goal is some variety. So take out the most defensive and cheapest ship for the Federation that can be abused, and then take out the highest punching kind of default choice for the Romulans so as to mix it up. So for Federation, there are special restricted cards of Type 8 phasers, Type 10 phasers, and upgraded phasers. The idea here being that, it's common to see like a 3 primary weapon value ship that gets boosted with all 3 of these cards up to like a 6. And the concern was that people would just essentially spam that. So as to keep the attack value reasonable and to increase diversity in fleet builds, these were restricted. And we'll talk about exactly what that means in a minute. For Romulans, the restricted cards are Cloaked Mines, Romulan Cloaking Device, and Interface Generator. Romulan Cloaking Device is a very fun card that gives Romulans an identity. The concern is that it can feel a little oppressive whenever the enemy has all exclusively ships with Romulan Cloaking Device, especially when they have high captain skill. So the thought was, don't take it away from them entirely, let them have their fun. However, let's have some limits. Cloaked Mines, similar story. Those are a very potent card, and especially in a scenario game where you can potentially abuse them by putting them around the objectives or something, right? So it's like, let's not take that away from them as a tool, but let's make sure that there are limits. Interface Generator is an extremely potent defensive card, and the concern was, if we ban or restrict Romulan Cloaking Device, the next obvious choice to put in that text slot is Interface Generator, and that could also be a little bit punishing, especially in an objective-based game where you just have a ship that has like a get-out-of-jail-free card and can potentially complete the objective for a pretty low cost. These things were not outright banned because of a lot of stuff. I think a big part is that Fremont really didn't want people to not have fun. It's like these cards are popular for a reason, and these cards are potent and effective. In the case of Romulan Cloaking Device, it really gives the Romulans an identity. And so the thought was, let's make it so that they still have that, but they have to be strategic and selective about how they apply these tools. So let's talk about how this works. So if a card is in the special restricted list, you cannot have more than 2 of each of any one of those cards. So you can only have a max of 2 Romulan cloaking devices. You cannot have 3, right? You have to have 2, 1, or 0 Romulan cloaking devices in your fleet. So two per card limit on each of those. Similarly, you can only have a maximum of 4 of any of those restricted cards, period, in your fleet at all. So you can run 2 cloaked mines, 2 Romulan cloaking devices, but then you could not bring an interface generator because that would put you at 5 total restricted cards in your fleet. And that's the example that was given here. So you don't need to run 4 restricted cards. You could run 0, you could run 1, whatever works for your build. However, this is just to give some sort of a cap here. And again, I mean, you can boost your attack values as Federation, but it's like every ship has all 3. That's a little excessive. So that's a lot of why this was done. Okay. That's really the most complicated aspects of the fleet building. So basically, you're looking for 130 SP. Each ship is 45 SP or less. And your captain skill is the only real unique consideration. You'll have to be keeping in mind what your printed average is, not accounting for generic captains or ships that have no captain. And then no NX-01, no scimitar, and up to 2 of each individual of these restricted cards. No more than 4 total of the restricted group. That's all of it in a nutshell. So keep in mind, you are not building fleets just to shoot the opponent's ships. You will play a randomly assigned scenario from these 6 scenarios. They have not shared the PDF of the scenarios and the whole tournament booklet yet. My understanding is that they want to kind of review some of the details in there and make sure that nothing kind of detail-oriented needs to be tweaked before it's actually posted. However, they have shared the scenarios in advance so as to allow people to build their fleets based on this. So nothing major is going to change in the sense that these will still be the objectives. They will still be scored the same way, and the objectives will work the same way. And this will allow you to kind of plan ahead for building your fleet around actually taking these scenarios on. So, I tried to kind of give these a little bit of a summary. You can read through them, pause the video, whatever you want to do. I haven't like read each of them and analyzed them top to bottom, so I'm not going to go into too much depth on how each of these works, what I think you should consider for each of them. Once the actual PDF comes out, my understanding is that Fremont might actually be posting these, so keep a lookout for that, and if it turns out that's what they do, I will link to that stuff. If that is not the case and I have time, I will try to run through the scenarios a little bit, perhaps, and do a quick analysis and explanation. And then, similarly, my understanding is that this is the second time that they have done this event. The first time they did this event, they actually did do YouTube videos that showed each of the scenarios in some depth, did a little bit of discussion on them, and even showed an example game of people playing a quick little match to show off the rules in practice. So I'll try to find that stuff and link to it as well so you can watch it if you're interested. Just keep in mind that it's possible some detail may have changed in between this time and last time. We'll see. Kind of just going high-level, broad strokes over it. There's one where you're kind of trying to hang out around the middle of the map, which you'll notice it says favors larger fleets, because you're scored based on how many ships are close to the center of the map, and you're just trying to keep as many as you can around there. So it's pretty easy with these fleet building rules to get 4 ships that are reasonably upgraded. Hypothetically, you could build out like 5, maybe even 6, I haven't tried, ship fleets. You're probably going to be seeing a lot of fleets that have between 3 and 4. However, this first scenario encourages people to kind of push it out to 4. With the 45 SP limits and all that stuff, you end up kind of finding that you have to be a little selective if you do that. So I think this is going to be pretty interesting. But you don't necessarily just want to build like 3 maxed out ships because you may have a disadvantage for this scenario. Um, there's also one where you have a corner of the board, your opponent has the opposite corner of the map. There's an objective in the middle, and you're trying to fly ships back and forth between your corner and the objective and secure dilithium tokens, basically like mission tokens you can think of mechanically. And whoever gets the most tokens wins. So you're not trying to shoot the other ships necessarily. It's to your benefit to shoot the other ships, but that's not why you're there. You're trying to send ships back and forth as much as possible, which, as it notes here, it favors fast ships. So if you can actually get something that is consistently sensor echoing or that can perform additional maneuvers or things like that, that could be very favorable in this scenario. But you don't know if you're going to get this one, so it's good to hedge potentially, but you don't necessarily want to only make your ships fast and incapable of doing something else. All right. Diplomatic escalation, I don't remember this one as well, but you'll notice it does say standard attack wing scenario. If I remember correctly, I think this one is like you start with one ship. Yeah, your highest whole ship starts in the middle, basically. It's there's like a planet in the middle, and you start, your deployment zone is like around the planet. So you have one ship each starting on opposite ends of a planet, and then there's a reinforcement zone where you start bringing in more ships as the rounds progress. So it's sort of like your highest whole ship versus your opponent's highest whole ship, and then bringing in your other ships around to help. So I don't know. Again, like I think this one could potentially be analyzed and isn't as simple as just, do you want like a strong ship or a fast ship or whatever. I do think that it would be beneficial to have faster ships to get out of the reinforcement zone to the middle of the board more quickly, but I could see this one going a lot of different ways. Attack on Kalis, this is a modification of one of the organized play events where you're hiding Galron on one of your ships. So the idea here is you secretly put Kalis, like assign Kalis to one of your ships, and your opponent does the same. You're trying to destroy the ship of your enemy who actually has the true Kalis card. So it's like, for each ship, put a face down card on the on the board, whatever, and one of those is the true one, the others are fake. Destroy the ship that has the true on there. So potentially good to put some ships can swap cards and stuff like that. So there's more nuance to it than what I described. However, the most obvious and straightforward way to handle this, I guess, would be put the true Kalis on your most defensive ship. However, that's also going to be what your opponent expects you to do, so you might want to put it on a different ship to throw them off. I don't know, right? I've never actually played this one. I'm interested to see how that goes. But it behooves you to have a mix of at least one defensive ship as well as at least one offensive ship, so that you can punch through their most defensive ship to get their Kalis while keeping your Kalis safe, right? The Tholian influence is an interesting one. There are Tholian ships that lay energy webs. I believe this is otherwise a straightforward 1v1 game. However, you have to navigate the whole Tholian webs that are generated. I don't remember exactly how. Oh yeah, you influence them by choosing their setup and their. Okay, I don't remember the specifics there, but it's more nuanced than just here's a web. But yeah, that's an interesting one. The sensor echoes can actually echo, at least as the first edition of this, they can echo over the webs, so that gives them, I guess, some sort of advantage over that. However, still a little bit tough to navigate. I'd be interested in seeing more on this one. All right, the Wrath of Zon. So there's this is a modified version of the Moltari Nebula scenario or OP event. The idea is that the most of the board is a nebula, and there are special rules for being in that nebula and attacking in the nebula. And so it's a lot more nuanced than just put your ships on the board and fight, right? So, yeah, again, each of these warrants probably their own video full of analysis. I won't do that here. Maybe I'll do it later. I'll give you links to where I know that people have done it. But the point being, in a simple sense, is you're not just trying to make the best ships for a straight up fight, a stand and fight, as it were. you're trying to make ships that can actually achieve these objectives and sustain well. So you might get one of the ones that is sort of a modified version of a straight up fight, or you might get one that is very much an objective based game where you're trying to stay in the middle of the map or you're trying to move dilithium. And in those cases, the person who actually built for the scenario would have a significant advantage. So again, I like this a lot because even if someone's not specifically optimizing for the scenarios, a less experienced player who was doing like a one-on-one matchup, a stand-and fight as it were, they potentially would have an advantage in one of these scenarios kind of by accident. And so it could be cool to see someone who's brand new come in here, try it out, end up really pulling one over on a more experienced player just because they sort of accidentally built to in a favorable condition. I don't know. There's a degree of randomness to it. There's a degree of the unknown to it. And I think that usually breeds a lot of fun among players who are at different skill levels. So again, I really encourage you, if you're brand new or you've been on the fence or you're returning or whatever, please try this one out. It's only going to be more fun with more people because of the whole team-based scoring thing. Based on what I've seen of the last time they did this, people really got into it. There was a lot of boasting on both sides about, Romulans versus Federation and stuff. And I wouldn't really go so far as to say people role-played per se, but people seem to really kind of like adopt the persona when they were trash talking, and I think that could be a lot of fun. So, come join in, pick a side, have a tribe, be in a band, and enjoy yourself. Worst probable case scenario is you'll meet some fun people who like Star Trek. So, is there anything I wanted to talk about that hasn't been covered? I don't think so. The only real big thing is that Fremont has their own edition of the rulebook. Personal opinion is that if it wasn't for this rulebook, I wouldn't be able to play the game. There's too much rule ambiguity, frankly, when it comes to like trying to use the official rulebook and nothing else. There are a ton of rulings online that WizKids has done over the years. Some of them are difficult to understand. Some of them are difficult to apply. Some of them feel like maybe they've been antiquated and don't really apply to the modern cards. The rulebook of Fremont does its best to actually make heads or tails of all of this. I find it to be very important and helpful. But all that said, if you need the link to that, that's going to be in the actual original announcement for this. And just give it a skim through. I would recommend, if you really know how to play the game, probably you'll be okay without reading it. Just tell people, wait, this isn't the right one. This is the card specific one. Just tell people you're new is what I would say, right? Like, even if you're experienced in Attack Wing but you haven't played with Fremont, just tell people, hey, I know what I'm doing, but I haven't actually played a Fremont game. I don't really know what's up with this Troy stuff. And they'll be able to interpret or intuit probably any kind of surprises that would come out of that and try to guide you through things. So just, check it out, see what the rulebook looks like. I don't know why I don't have that up. Let's see, Troy. Yeah, here we go. Okay. So, yeah. Here's an example of how this works. Everything's color-coded. If it's black, it's either the original text or is the original text of a ruling. So it's like from the rulebook or a ruling. If it's blue, it's a slightly reworded version of the rulebook or a ruling that is intended to keep the same spirit and meaning. But it's just trying to keep things clear and fitting. If it's red, this is something that's specific to Fremont. So it's their best effort at making a ruling based on previous rulings and understandings of the rules, but it's not necessarily an official ruling from WizKids. So they do a pretty good job of trying to color code that, make things clear. Oh, I guess green exists too. If it's green, this is something that's specific to playing online on Tabletop Simulator. So for instance, you can see like a lot of the setup rules have a green corresponding section to help clarify, this is what the rules tell you to do physically. This is how we do it in Tabletop Simulator. You really don't need to be too familiar with these to play, as long as you know the rules in general. But again, this is the kind of thing that someone can help you through if you're lost. Another thing that is planned for new players is the group is expecting to publish a handful of sample fleets. So if you're new to the game or what have you, you can potentially just adopt one of those fleets instead of building your own. And so the the benefit there is that you'll know that you'll have something competent to fly. You don't have to necessarily put in the time and effort to build a fleet and then be disappointed if it doesn't live up to your expectation. You can just join the tournament, fly one of the fleets, have a good time, hopefully, and really reduces barrier to entry. But the other thing that's expected to be done, to the extent people can do it, and to the extent people want to, is the Fremont mods and judges and everyone, they're planning to try and use these fleets for like teaching games. So if you need a refresher on the rules, or it's your first time or whatever, right? Maybe you have a friend who you want to try and get into it. People are planning to be available to play these games with the fleets, maybe even play a scenario. Details are still a little up in the air, but we're trying to help people kind of join into the game, get acclimated, and have fun. So there will be some teaching games. Just be clear about what you need or what you want out of it. Like, I haven't played in years. I want to see how the game works now. I've never played a Fremont event. I don't know what's up with this Troy rulebook. I've literally never played before, right? Any of these are perfectly fine. Just be communicative about the situation, and people will do their best to help onboard you and reduce as much friction as possible. Okay, I think that's literally everything I wanted to talk about. We're using the Troy 2.6 rules. Again, links in the description. Links in the Discord and the post. I want to emphasize this, though, because recently in Discord there was some discussion from one of the people that represents WizKids talking about some rules interpretations that are a little different from what is in Troy. These have not been analyzed and actually implemented into Troy yet. So the Fremont rulebook is as it stands. It is not trying to adopt that new information, just because, I mean, mostly just because it hasn't really been analyzed fully and hasn't actually been written down. So I wanted to emphasize that because I know that some people may have read some of that stuff and then want to build fleets with that understanding, and I don't want anyone to have a feels bad experience where two people are on a different page of how something should work. So if you're familiar with the with the Fremont events previously, assume that's how it works, because that's how it's going to work for this event. But yeah, nothing else really to talk about. A quick glimpse at what I know they used for the scenarios last year, or not last year, sorry, last time they ran this. This is the old PDF. There's going to be a PDF for the new one that's slightly modified. So I'm actually really excited to look. I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, everything's going to be broken apart. So all the fleet building rules, all that stuff, all the scenarios have nice, clear write-ups with images and all that. So the polish on this is actually pretty good. Don't let me glossing over it fool you. But yeah, like I say, I'll post some links talking about each of the scenarios and all that stuff, and hopefully everyone has a really good time. If you have any questions at all, please hop into the Discord, right? So go to Fremont Reformation League is the Discord. There's an invite link on my channel, and just ask questions, right? It's a lot of channels. Please don't be intimidated. You can literally just go to general and start typing and asking questions, and we'll get you figured out, right? You don't overcomplicate it for yourself. We get that you're new. We get that it can be overwhelming. So don't sweat it, right? If you're looking for the actual event announcement, that is in the event announcements channel. And then, and honestly, at that point, you should have everything you need. But just keep in mind, there is a specific channel for the event as well. If you click that, it'll open right up for you, and you can type in there if you have specific things about that. But when in doubt, just use general, and we'll help you get figured out. All right. I'm really glad to have you guys on board. I really want to see some new faces. If you have a question, I would say Discord, again, is the best. If you have a comment on this video, I'll do my best to get to it. But you'll catch me on Discord. And you'll also catch other people who are more in the know than me. So just go there. But I hope to see you around, and yeah, happy flying.